3 o'clock. We have a quorum, so let's go ahead and kick this off. Roll call, please.
Jorge Charnico.
Here.
Lee Peoples.
Here.
Anthony Black. Dylan Bradway. Donna Cervantes. Matt Guillory.
Here.
Tyler Holmes. Ben Sellers.
Here.
And James Varnum. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Everybody should have received a copy of the May 23rd minutes. Are there any comments or revisions that need to be made to the minutes? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Second was Lee. All in favor? Aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. This month we have no cases withdrawn, and we have no cases that have requested continuance. We do have one item in the consent docket. Michael, if you could just give us a brief overview, please.
Yes, this application is for a mural in the Asian district on the retaining wall that's at the south side of the parking lot for the Lido restaurant and the other businesses in that building at the southeast corner of Military Avenue and 25th Northwest. I think we noted for you in the staff report that the mural was already installed and it was done for the purpose of being in place for a festival that was held in June. And they're coming forward now to have the appropriate approvals made for that mural, and we've recommended approval. The Arts Commission also considered this mural at their meeting on June 18th, and they did recommend approval of the mural as well.
Are there any questions for Michael? Okay, is someone willing to put forward a motion to approve the consent docket?
Make a motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Consent docket moves forward. Cases for individual consideration. We've got 3 today, and we'll start with UDCA 18-00018 at 600 Northwest 7th Street.
Yes, this item was continued from the meeting on May 23rd, earlier this year. You may recall the project had a number of issues with respect to the front yard setback along Northwest 7th Street. And there were a number of residents in the area who came out in opposition to the project because of the variance requested for the front yard setback. Since that time, the applicant has gone back, done some redesign to the project such that the setback on 7th Street is now in compliance with the setback requirements as established by the other existing front yard setbacks along the south side of Northwest 7th between Lee and Dewey. And therefore the variance for the front yard setback is no longer an issue and not referenced in the staff report. There is still a variance required for the proposed front yard fence, the low patio privacy fence that is along 7th Avenue, and staff is still in support of that variance request. And then in addition, we still have the design guideline issues of the use of wood and the lack of a 24-inch elevation, which we had indicated in our previous staff report that we were in support of those aspects of the design as well. So that concludes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions the Commission may have.
Does the Commission have any questions for Michael?
I had a question at our May meeting. There was some discussion about the applicant producing some topographical drawings or drawings that correctly showed the elevation of the house as it relates to the streets. And I'm looking through the packet. Have those been provided?
Yes, those renderings are in your packet. I should have mentioned that as part of my presentation. In addition to all the renderings that the first 11 by 17 colored rendering is kind of a bird's eye view. You don't really see it there. But the view that's shown on the second page, not so much the third page, but then again on the fourth page, those have all been adjusted to reflect the grade coming down from 7th Street, and the adjustments that were made to the driveway and the sidewalk at the the vehicular entrance off of North Dewey. And then in addition to those drawings, there are some additional renderings provided because there was some discussion made, or discussion at the last meeting with respect to how the project might impact views from homes that are existing on the north side of 7th Street. And he's provided a view from the front of both of those homes, one at 601 Northwest 7th, and that's, I think, the 5th rendering, and then again 607 Northwest, which is the 6th rendering, and in both cases it shows that the revised design of the home does not necessarily have any significant impact on the view to the skyline of downtown for this project. So we believe that the renderings that you have in your packet do accurately show how the project will look given the slope of the property.
Any other questions from the commission? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak in regards to this project? Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design Review. I applaud the design.
You need to include a condition for the variance.
Sorry. Yes. Do we need that as a separate motion for the recommendation?
Your initial motion should have the condition that they get the variance from the fence.
Okay. Add to the end of that motion that the applicant, the condition that the applicant get a variance from the Board of Adjustment for the front yard fence design.
But before we get a second or a vote, is there anyone in the audience that would, did we call for?
I did.
We did, okay.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. I'm sorry, what, Matt, let's...
Yeah,
Matt, if
with
you
the
could repeat.
condition that they get the variance for front yard fence design and materials.
So now we need a separate motion for the recommendation. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It was all in favor. So now we need another motion for the recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjusters.
I move that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the front yard fence design and materials requirement.
second.
Second by Donna. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. The second case for individual consideration is UDCA 18-00020 at 601 Northwest 23rd Street. Michael?
Yes, this is an application for a new sign on an existing sign structure at 601 Northwest 23rd Street. The site is located at the northwest corner of Northwest 23rd and Dewey. This is a building that was recently gone through a remodel that was approved through a separate CA that was approved administratively a couple of years ago, and now that the building is nearing completion of that renovation, the tenants are starting to move into the building, and you already have Hertz Donuts in there with their signs have been approved administratively. This is a request for a dentist's office to have signage on the building. And we have provided you a lot of background with respect to this requested sign. In particular, one of the things we provided was something the applicants submitted to us with respect to an ad that was talking about the sale or lease of this building, and shows from the era of the 70s that at one time there were two signs on this structure, with the upper one being a regular sign for the Mutual Federal Bank, and then there's a sign in that photograph below it, it's an electronic time and temperature sign. And what the applicant is trying to achieve with this request is to replicate the design of that original sign and proportions of that original sign by adding a new sign back in underneath the larger upper sign. There are two code provisions that apply to this that require a variance. The first being that signs in the public right-of-way they're prohibited, and therefore to be located in the public right-of-way, they must obtain a variance. Now, at the time this sign was built, that probably may not have been the case, but now we do have that regulation on the books. So this is an opportunity for us to legitimize essentially the new signs being proposed as well as the existing sign that's on the structure today. And we've indicated in our staff report a variety of reasons detailed that we support the request to allow the sign to remain in the public right-of-way. Secondarily, the sign code for this portion of town, or portion of Northwest 23rd Street, speaks to the requirement that any freestanding signs should be ground signs, because that's the only standard that we have for freestanding signs in this zoning classification. And therefore, the presumption is that the only types of freestanding signs that are allowed are ground signs. Clearly, this is not a ground sign, and frankly, as we've discussed in our staff report, number one, there's probably not a lot of room here to have a ground sign. Secondarily, it would be located very close to the intersection and probably interfere with a sight distance triangle if we were to try to put a ground sign in this location. And depending on the size of it, it would be probably not gel too well with the pedestrian traffic you're trying to generate there along the street. So for those reasons, staff is also recommending support of the variance request for this to not be a ground sign. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions that the commission may have.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Could you clarify, there's some comment in your report in regards to the sign and that it went to the State Historical Preservation. There was another version of the sign that was not approved?
Yeah, I did not see that version of the sign. The applicant, I believe, is here and could maybe explain that a little more, but they had attempted to do a sign that was building mounted and projecting off the front of the building, and SHPO decided that was not consistent with the historical character of the building.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the commission? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak in regards to this project?
I have a question for, probably for the applicant if they're here. And this looks like a logical and workable place to put a sign. What other signage is going to be needed for this building is the basic question. I know there's a basement in this space. How many other tenants are going to need signage?
So is the applicant here, or is there a representative here that can speak to the project?
I can speak to that. When we have a multi-tenant building and the sign code for the attached signage limits the amount of signage to 8% of the wall area of the building that the sign is attached to. And when we have a single-tenant building, that's fairly easy to implement. However, when we have a multi-tenant building like this, we ask each applicant that comes in for individual signage on the building to demarcate the size, both width and height, of their tenant space so that we can break down the signage and apportion it proportionally to the size of the tenant suites that are inside the building. So this being the second tenant, I'm not sure how many more there may be in here. I would expect that there won't be any more proposed signs on this freestanding structure, but there may be some more proposed signage on the structure itself as more tenants come in to fill that space. But we do it proportionally by the size of the interior tenant space.
Are there any more questions? All right, do we have a motion?
I motion to approve the application on the basis the project meets the guidelines and regulations of the Urban Design Overlay District Zone Ordinance as referred to in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the application shall obtain the variance from the Board of Adjustments and the prohibition against signs in the street in the right-of-way of the requirement for freestanding signs to be ground signs in Track 4 of the NC District.
Thank you, Dylan. Is there a second? Second, Ben. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. The next, you're right. So we need to also vote on recommendation to the Board of Adjustment.
I'll make a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for the variance of the prohibition against the signs in the street right-of-way and from the requirement that freestanding signs be ground signs in Track 4 of the NC District.
Great, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ben. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you very much. Next item for consideration is UDCA 18-00023 at 907 North Francis Avenue. Michael?
Yes, this application is for a demolition of an existing residential structure and the replacement of that with a new contemporary design residential structure on the west side of North Francis Avenue between Northwest 8th Street and Northwest 9th Street. This particular application involves two variance requests, one for the front yard setback of the structure, the second being for the front yard fence, very similar to the Ward residence application you saw earlier on this agenda. In this case, we have outlined and detailed for you in the staff report reasons why we do not support the request for the variance on the front yard setback on the structure. There is some debate about what the existing setback is of the three structures that exist on the west side of this street in this block. The applicant has maintained that the setback for those three existing structures is uniform at 9 feet. We have taken steps to measure it through another method and found that setback is anywhere from 12.5 to 15 feet on those three structures. And because this structure is built and designed to have a 9-foot setback, it's not within the range of the existing setbacks of the structures that are on the west side of the street. And we have therefore recommended denial for the variance in the front yard setback. We are supportive of the request for the 4-foot tall front yard fence, similar to our position that we took on the Ward residence. And then moving forward, we also have the demolition of the structure. And we've gone through all the applicable design guidelines for analysis of demolition and provided for you in the staff report the detailed reasons why we support the request for the demolition of the structure primarily because the very foundation of the structure is in very poor shape, and therefore to repair that foundation, it becomes almost essential to demolish the structure to get to the foundation anyway. So that's our primary justification for supporting the request for the demolition of the structure. And then with respect to the new home, we also have, similar to the Ward residence, request to use IPA wood as an exit material, and also not to have the 24-inch elevation for the entry of the home. And we are supportive of both of those requests with respect to the design guidelines. So that concludes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions that the commission may have.
So the only objection is to the setback?
Our objection right now in this case is not to the demolition, not to the front yard fence, not to the wood, and not to the 24-inch elevation. We support all those cases. We are recommending denial of any variance for the front yard setback on this residential structure.
Great. Any questions from the commission?
You mentioned there was a different method used to measure the setbacks. Could you go into a little detail on that?
When you go on the county assessor's website, there's a tool there that you can use to measure distances on an aerial. And we first calibrated that by using that measuring tool to measure the distance or the depth of the lot, and it came out, it's a 100-foot lot deep, and we calibrated it, and it came out 100 feet. And because of that, we felt that that tool was very accurate. And then again, when we went to use it on the 3 existing structures for the front yard setback, we found, as I indicated in my presentation, that the setback on the northerly house at the corner of 9th and North Francis was approximately 12.5 to 12.75 feet, and the other 2 houses, mid-block, were right around 15. If we had been closer to the 9 feet that the applicant was representing, we probably wouldn't have made a big issue out of it, but 6 foot was a significant difference in the measurement. And we suggested that the applicant obtain a survey of the property, and we never received anything to that effect. So that's kind of where we ended up.
Matt, go ahead.
It's along the same lines. There's obviously, I'm confused a little bit as to what the differences are by the setback. I'm looking at page 9 of 18 of our packet. Is that something that we can put? Oh, there it is. So what is this that we're looking at here? Is this something done by staff or by the applicant?
This is the applicant's.
Okay. Can you talk about where his setback is in relation to the existing house? Because on this visual here, our setback is going to be determined based, in comparison to the other structures, including the one that we're going to tear down, I assume.
Correct.
So how does this relate to the setback of the existing house that's there that's going to be torn down?
Well, he's saying the setback on all 3 houses is 9 feet. And that's why he's designed his new house to have a 9-foot front yard setback.
So our debate right now is the definition of what 9 feet is based on where you're starting from?
No, it's just they've measured it one way. We don't feel that it's an accurate measurement because we've measured it a different way and come up with 15 feet.
Yeah,
We believe it's being measured to the same place. There's no debate about where it's being measured to. It's being measured to the front property line.
And how much further back or closer to the street is that from the existing house that's going to be torn down?
The applicant is saying it's equal to the existing houses. We're saying that it's probably 6 feet closer than what we believe the setback to be.
Is the applicant here?
If you could, well, let me kind of wrap. Are there any more questions for Michael? If you could state your name and please sign in.
Yeah. My name is Jacob Schwab.
And also your address. I'm sorry about that.
907 North Francis.
Matt, you had a question?
Are you proposing putting your new structure closer to the street than the existing structure you're going to tear down?
Well, as you can see from that page that you pointed out, what I did, and as you can see, A and B surveying, I had 2 lots surveyed. I don't have the money to have the whole block surveyed like Michael wanted me to do. I can't pay to have the whole thing surveyed. That's just out of my budget. So I had 2 lots surveyed, and this is what we came up with. And so, like I say right here in this, from the curb to the setback of the house is 25.2 inches. And the way that we got this is we actually went out there and took measurements with a tape measure. And I asked Michael, I said, can I send you pictures of the tape measurement? Can I send you video of us measuring it? You know, what will be acceptable? And I never got a response to that. And so between having 2 lots surveyed and going out there and measuring it with a tape measure, this is what we come up with. And I guess some software came up with something else.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I understand, and I appreciate that, you know, you're measuring it one way and we're measuring it another. Let's ignore the curb and the setback right now. I want to talk about the existing house in comparison to the new house.
Okay.
Is the setback going to be the same on the new house as it is on
That is correct.
the current house?
That is correct.
Okay.
It will start at the exact same point from the property line. And another thing that I would like for you guys to take a look at, and it's kind of hidden back here on page 18 of 18, and I realize that Michael's denied our request for this, and I've tried to explain to him multiple times, and I don't think that he gets it. But on Francis between 8th and 9th Street, there's 3 lots that are cottage. The other 7 are DTD1. And so their setback is 0 to 10 feet. So as you can see, my neighbor, who we shared the architect, we share a driveway system, is going to be at 9 feet. And so with that said, shouldn't our houses be the same setback? Or should mine set back 6.5 feet further like Michael wants it to, and so it won't be, you know, uniform is like what we're ultimately looking for on that street. And since you guys only control 3 houses, which rules are we going to go off of? These rules or off of DTD1 rules? Because right now we have 2 sets of rules for 1 block, and it's kind of confusing. Does that make sense?
I may address that. I think we have to go off of the cottage district rules because that's the only thing we have jurisdiction over. And the DDRC is quite different, so I don't think you can compare a house in DDRC, even though it might be right next to you. It's under different rules. And also the aim of the setback is not uniformity. It's to be within a range. So uniform is not the goal of that setback.
What is so you want everybody to be within the same range, not for uniformity?
No, it's uniformity so that one is not sticking way out in front of the other.
That's what we're trying to avoid here. But if you guys say that I can't build at 9 feet like all the other homes will be at 9 feet or less, then I'm going to be way back, and which is that's not feasible. I can't do that.
Well, to me, I mean, the setback is a major issue to me, and staff does this very frequently. We just had a case right before you where, we reached agreement on the measurements, and I'm not comfortable when staff comes down with a different measurement. I think we need to resolve that issue, at least for me.
I would love to go with Michael to go take a tape measure and go do it. Like, I would love to. That would be fantastic.
You had this surveyed. Can
Yes.
they not define the setback? Can your surveyor not define your setback?
Yes, the survey does define the setback. I don't know if it's in this sheet, but obviously that's where my architect got all the information for the setback of both of these homes, and that's why they're designed this way. So she, obviously, if I'm mismeasuring by 5.5 feet, then so is she, because this is where this all started from.
I don't see any civil drawings.
I'm sorry, well,
Oh, I see.
there's an overlay on 9.
Okay.
You see how it's overlaid?
Yeah, I see that.
So to say this a different way, which I think is what everyone has been saying, so for your site plan sheet, floor plan drawing, you're saying if we put the existing house on top of this, it would be at this line?
It would come to the very front porch, just very
that
front
line,
step of the
your
very
garage
front
door.
porch. We'll come to that point, yeah. I said, me and the architect both came up with that, and so.
Can you restate that, please?
I said, the architect and I both came up with that.
No,
same.
but where the existing house is in relation to
It was
this new
the
house?
front of it.
It's like 9 feet, 2
The
inches.
porch or the wall, the front wall or the porch?
Of the current house
Current house,
to the front step.
to the front step.
So the red line on page 9, that appears that that is on the current existing house. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, 1 second, sir. Okay, say that again?
The red line, that is the front of the current existing house, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, as you can see, I overlaid the survey,
Right.
and it has a mark for every 25 feet. If you see, that fits directly with 9th Street and 8th Street. So it's this is uniform, and that mark is directly on 25 feet. That's why I'm saying it's 25 feet, 2 inches from the curb to where the houses begin, or to
Gotcha.
where my house begins.
Gotcha. And I think you just answered this previously, but to clarify again, the new house is going to be on that same red line?
Yeah,
Okay.
it actually moved up 2 inches.
Oh, 2 inches,
It's
okay.
9 feet, 2 inches
Gotcha.
to 9 feet.
Okay.
To match the house to my north that is under UDC.
Gotcha.
Or, excuse me, under DDT.
So when you go with your tape measure, how do you know where the property line is?
Off of these measurements, 16 and a half inches, or 16 and a half feet from
the curb.
is what the surveying company told me to do. Obviously, I don't know where everybody's property line is, but I know where my house and the house to the north, that I had both of them surveyed, I know where they both begin, so that's what I'm making that line off of.
I think it would be valuable if your surveyor defined the setback and also showed it in the architectural drawings, so we could see the relationship between that setback and everything else that's been drawn.
Okay. Setback, and is it fine if I just do it for those 2 lots? Because like I said, I don't want to have the whole block surveyed.
Well, I think
That's pretty expensive.
as it pertains to us, I think it's relevant to your lot.
Okay, my lot, okay.
I mean, maybe the commissioners feel different. but
I wouldn't be
think
surprised if they already have that information.
From my point of view, I mean, if the new structure is going with the same setback as the structure that's being torn down, 2 inches different or whatever the case may be, substantially the same as what's being torn down, then I have no problem with what the setback is. We seem to have failure to understand what measurement we're using or where we're starting the measurement from or something. We're talking 2 different languages, but if there's a way that, and this is something, from my point of view, we can approve conditioned upon staff verifying that it's actually going to be in the same spot as the existing house. I mean, I think this is something that we can take care of today and just get the clarification after the fact. Let staff get the clarification after the
I
fact.
think that's a fair statement. Because I do think, not that we don't want to take your word, but I would like confirmation that those steps are in fact 2 inches.
And I don't mind that because I've already paid this surveyor, so I'm sure that he'll have that data and that he'll be able to supply you guys with it almost immediately.
Let me just, so if we let this happen subject to staff reviewing it, if staff finds it's not, then we're in a situation where the applicant's coming back to potentially request a variance? Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. And would that go to the Board of Adjustments or back to here?
We'd have to come back here first and then to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, come back here as a variance and then Board of Adjustments. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. That sounds we're happy with that. Just like I said, we're mismeasuring or somebody's wrong, so.
Michael, I have a question about, I understand that everybody desires this to be on the same footprint as the existing house. Is the existing house within the range of all the other structures on the block? I believe it is.
Everything I've seen shows that this house and the south immediately to the south of it are basically at the same setback. They line up with this red line that you see on this exhibit. If anything, I would say the house at the north end of the block at the corner of Northwest 9th is maybe a little closer. So in essence, these two houses would set the range,
Yeah, I just wanted to make
or
sure.
at least set one end of the range anyway.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to make sure if we're committing to it being in the same place, that that's not causing
Correct.
a conflict
Yeah.
elsewhere, okay.
One more question. Worst case scenario, hypothetical, we come up and we're 2.5 feet off, something like that. Obviously, we'd have to come back to you guys. And let's say that variance is denied for 2.5 feet. Would I have to wait until other people in DTD1 build and wait on them to make the setback and then come back, so I could be waiting years or possibly to
I think you would
start
then,
this project?
you would then go to the Board of Adjustment. Is that not the case?
That is the case, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to get familiar with
The variance could be recommended for denial by the commission, but the Board of Adjustment has their own authority to either go along with that recommendation or not.
Right, okay.
So-
That makes sense. Okay.
Are there any other questions for the homeowner?
Just as a clarification, based on what Michael just said, it sounds like the existing structures on this street, these two houses are further, they're setting the far end of the setback, right? And then the one down the street is actually...
Actually, from the measurements we took on the county assessor's website, I think the house on the north end, it might be a little bit closer.
Right, so this
This would be the far back.
would be the far back. So, if we can establish what measurement we're using, it'll establish what the actual range is that we're building in. And what you're asking for is, if we're all understanding each other correctly, you're asking for the back end of that range. So it'd be perfectly within reason. We just need to make sure we're comparing apples and
I
apples.
completely understand, and I'm sure we can get that data for you guys just as soon as possible.
But I do think it needs to be your surveyor. I think taking a tape to it.
I know, I agree. That's what I'm saying, is I will have the surveyor get you guys the data, so it's from a licensed surveyor. Like I said, I paid for the 2 lots to have done, and I couldn't pay for the rest of the block to get done, so, but.
Are there any other questions? Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this project? Go ahead and come up. If you could, state your name and address, and please sign in.
Michael Giraco, 2005 Kiowa Circle in Edmond. I'm the immediate next-door neighbor on the east side of Francis, and I just wanted to wager my support for the applicant. I'm familiar with the area. I know what he's trying to do. I know there are some challenges to building on Francis because of the shallow lot depth, and I'm familiar with his plan, and just wanted to say that I support it as his immediate neighbor.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions? All right. Is there a motion someone's willing to put forward?
I'll give it a try. I make a motion of approval with the condition, on the basis that the project meets regulations, but with the condition that the applicant work with staff to confirm that the setback is within the range that's established by the existing houses on the block, which is going to be close to the existing house that will be torn down here.
And the condition that they obtain a variance for the front yard fence.
Yes. And on condition that they get a variance for the front yard fence design and materials.
Did you get that, Paula? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second from Ben. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Motion passes. We also need to vote on the recommendation for the Board of Adjustment.
May I ask a question? So we're not going to address the Board of Adjustment issue dealing with setback because it might be a moot issue.
Right.
If it turns out not to be a moot issue and they go to the Board of Adjustment for the fence, is that going to be another fee, Board of Adjustment fee? Or would they have to pay 2 Board of Adjustment fees anyway?
Depends on how they time it
Okay.
and when they file their application.
Okay.
I would suggest that they hold off filing any variance requests until we've sorted out the front yard setback. And they
Which
won't-
should be quick.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for the variance from the applicable front yard fence design and material requirement.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Other business? We don't have any, it looks like. We do have some communications. Michael?
Yes, we've had 4 administrative approvals over the past month here in the UD district. 3 of them are in Northwest 23rd Street, Uptown District, 1 for a sign, actually 2 for a sign, and 1 for a shipping container being located on a site that is going to be behind a screened fence and gate. The third item is for a sign in the Capitol Hill area, a fence in the Capitol Hill area on South Harvey. And those applications were all approved administratively by staff.
Any questions for Michael? We do not vote on those, correct? Okay, so comments from Planning Department staff.
Paula had sent, I was on vacation last week, so I'm still catching up. Paula had sent out an email saying she was going to try something for quorum polling. We have since found out, well, we're going through a Windows 10 conversion, but Paula cannot convert because some of the software she uses to produce your packets and notices won't work on Windows 10. So she's going to stay on 8. So she cannot use the quorum software. So don't expect, there will not be a follow-up for you guys to use the quorum software, unfortunately. We're trying to make things easier for everybody, but this won't work. Is that the gist?
Any other comments from planning? Comments from commission members?
I would just, we had 2 different cases today in the Cottage District that both dealt with short fences in the front yard, which we seem to approve as just a matter of right. It is the common thing there. Every time they have to apply for a Board of Adjustment, which is what, $2,300 for it?
It's not that much, but I have on my desk a ordinance amendment that will change most of the fence regulations, including that one, to guidelines. This ordinance also has pieces of various issues collected over the last 2 years. I'm waiting for a final review, and then we'll move it forward. But it's under 7,200, which is under the downtown portion of the ordinance. But yes, staff is eager to see it changed, and applicants certainly are.
Yeah.
Could you outline just quickly what else is in there? I think we were talking about the 21-inch height.
The 24-inch height thing will be removed. Most of the fence regulations will be moved to guidelines. It will adopt the downtown development framework by reference. It will adopt the building conservation guidelines by reference. That means they'll actually be in the code. It will define some areas along Automobile Alley. I'm trying to think, I think there were some miscellaneous cottage district changes that we did in our study last summer. Those are being updated in the DDF, and since the DDF is being adopted by reference in the code, everything we picked up from those workshops, if you participated in them, it should be in there. And it's also giving, right now, there's no provision for staff to approve almost anything in the cottage district. So we're clarifying that staff may do administrative approvals in the cottage district.
Will that come to us?
Yeah, it'll come to you probably a couple months.
Speaking of things that have come to us, and just kind of checking where they are in the process, what's the status with both the Lincoln corridor and with the traditional neighborhoods overlay?
Yeah, traditional neighborhoods is going back to Planning Commission, Urban Development Committee on July 12th with the request, again, that it be set for introduction. And then Lincoln Boulevard was set for introduction, and it's going to be introduced on July 12th at Planning Commission. So Lincoln Boulevard will go to 2 Planning Commission meetings, and then it'll go to 3 City Council meetings. Traditional neighborhoods, hopefully it will be set for introduction at the July 12th Urban Development Committee. Hopefully they'll set it for introduction at the August Planning Commission meeting, and then it'll begin its Planning Commission and City Council meeting cycles. So yes, they are moving forward.
What's the time for that UDC on the 12th?
It starts in the morning. There are several items on the agenda. Maybe 11:30. It might.
Yeah,
11:30.
they're usually around 11:30, 11:45, something like that.
Yeah, there's like some workshop stuff about Plan OKC in the morning, and then closer to lunch is the TNO portion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Then we will adjourn. The next regular meeting is Wednesday, July 25th. New applications were to be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, June 26th. Revisions and information on continued projects are to be submitted by July 3rd, 2018. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Michael, thanks for all the updates.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Have a good 4th.